liken life in some respects to a game of cards. Some people are dealt a really good hand, some people not so good, and you just got to live your life according to the hand you got dealt. In my case, I feel I got the 4 aces and joke, and I was very fortunate. One of the great lessons that I was given was I seem to go get along with people and enjoy people. I'm 90, and if I was 9, I wouldn't change a single thing in my whole life.
Jack Hurley was born on the 7th of February 1917 at Star Gully, which is just near Caramba on the north coast of New South Wales.
At 6 years of age, we moved to Caramba, and the first mechanised vehicle I ever saw was 2 traction engines used to haul timber up the hill through the town, and they just absolutely fascinated me. I used to go down and watch them every day, and the drivers, of course, had real smoky faces from all the soot and that. They had a mark around their lips, and I used to walk around with my lip bent over, thinking I was looking like them, and I developed this big sore along my lip. So perhaps that's an indication of where I was going to go. And
Jack's father Mick cut sleepers at first and saved enough money to buy a bullock team.
In 1924, Dad told the bullock team, and he and Bev Hudson, his partner, bought a truck, a white truck, solid tired truck, and brought it home, and well, I've been hooked on trucks ever since. Every holiday, I never ever wanted to go anywhere on the Dad's truck, on the truck with Dad, worked on the truck for the weekend with him, and school wasn't considered very important those days. He had a special trip on somewhere. Well, a few days or school didn't matter. I used to go with you. Those days, of course, you had no lights, and just when it come dark, you stopped. You used to camp at the roadside. You can imagine how good that was for young blokes.
There were no trailers at the time for trucks, and long logs were loaded on the outside. The driver and the off-sider can be seen overlooking the long outside logs. Shorter logs were behind the driver. As the end of the 1920s came closer, Mick Hurley and his wife and family moved to get more work with the truck. They finally ended up in Kyogle, in the northeast of New South Wales, close to the Queensland border. It was 1924 when the Hurley family arrived in Kyogle. The town was named in 1901, and a census revealed 51 people lived there then. By 1911 there was 1,226 residents. Kyogle was becoming a business centre, and by 1950 there were 520 dairy farms operating in the district. Jack had a very happy lifetime growing up in the town. He played cricket on the street and in the backyard and swam in the creek. He also spent a lot of time with his dad on that truck. The railway was pushing the line through to Brisbane. The work began in 1926, and Mick and his partner had bought another truck. The road was in very poor condition. There were some 26 creek crossings in 13 miles, and when it rained and the trucks were bogged, they left them and walked home, and that was often. During the golden age of Australian Railway, a plan to build a link between Sydney and northern New South Wales via Byron Bay, Tweed Heads and Southport, then westward to connect to the existing Sydney-Brisbane line at Tenterfield. After it opened, it became the main line, and Casino-Murwillumbah became the branch line. That line closed in 2004. The railway employed hundreds of men to dig through the hilly country before tunnelling through the McPherson mountain range and coming out in Queensland. Horses were also put to work, pulling the loads of rock and soil to be moved. Steam-driven machinery was brought in, and Jack remembered the talk of strike action as the men thought they might lose their jobs. Explosives were often used. Gravity was put to use, but the timing had to be right, or Neddy would know about it. Pay cars drove over the steep mountainside to pay the men. The line was opened in 1930. 2 years later, the Clarence River was crossed by an unusual bridge that was built for cars as well as trains. The Sydney to Brisbane rail link was now complete. Early in the century, a road was being dug through the McPherson Range to meet the Mount Lindesay Highway, which ran between Brisbane and Tenterfield. From the Mount Lindesay Highway to Kyogle Casino and Grafton, the road was named the Summerland Way, and it was always believed that this road would improve as time went by. But there was little attention given to it. It was neglected by the New South Wales government. From 1980, Jack spent 15 years as president of the Summerland Way Committee. It was Jack's firm belief that if this route to Brisbane was upgraded, it would benefit Casino, Kyogle, and was much shorter. It would also take traffic off the overloaded Pacific Highway. Jack's parents had thought that he should become a school teacher, but Jack started work as a motor mechanic. The experience he had had working with his father on his truck helped him get the job. Motor vehicles were here to stay, and there were few mechanics. Mick sold his truck and bought the first international crawler tractor on the market. He worked it near Billy's Creek, west of Dorrigo, snigging logs. Mick eventually sold his tractor and died in 1965 on his 83rd birthday. He had a banana plantation at Woolgoolga. Jack said his teenage and growing up years could not have been better. There were a lot of kids growing up in Kyogle, and they all had lots of fun. Not many had motor cars, and there were very strong community bonds. When anything was on, everyone went. I would like going to the rifle range with brother Fred, who was a very good shot. Naturally, girls started to become interesting. Jack married Thelma Grieve, who he met at one of the Friday night dances. They decided that if the Japanese entered the war, Jack would join the army. He joined the army and was trade tested, and was sent to Moorebank to train drivers. Eventually, they trained over 4,000 men. Jack was promoted to warrant officer. In 1941 was the birth of Una, the first of 5 children. Jack and his mate Alan and the Brown and Hurley business is a real success story.
We went on to the sales and we started off selling white trucks, which were very good for us at the time, but when they wouldn't change over to diesels for us, we went to Leyland in '57, and that's when we really got off the floors. We were open branches. Strangely enough, the next one after Brisbane '61 was Townsville, and we've opened a parts branch then in the Gold Coast. We got involved with Kenworth in 1964. Those days, of course, they were too dear. People couldn't buy them, they were too dear. They're still too dear, but people are still buying.
We deal mainly with truck people, and their livelihood depends on keeping the trucks on the road, and that's one of the main reasons. I think we put spare parts places all around the place, and we sold trucks in cans, so we built a shop in Townsville to service them. And that's the main reason, I think.
As the need arose, we've always considered ourselves a service organisation. As we saw an area that needed service, we were open branches. Strangely enough, the next one after Brisbane '61 was Townsville, and we've opened a parts branch then in the Gold Coast in Toowoomba. We bought the Kenworth branch in Coffs Harbour in '81, and parts in Tamworth, and we of course upgraded all those premises, Brisbane, all them, and we're about to build new premises in Yatala on the Gold Coast and in Toowoomba, our own premises there.
It's still running today, with the 3rd generation of the Brown and Hurley families running the business. At all times, the partnership between Alan Brown and Jack Hurley had the strong support of their wives, Lil Brown and the late Thelma Hurley. In 2006, the business employs 230 people and is selling multi-million dollars worth of trucks each year. And it all started in the little town of Kyogle, where the head office still is. When Jack and Thelma came back from Sydney and the army, they bought a block of land on the hill overlooking Kyogle. After 60 years, Jack still lives there.
Don't get around very move much, you might say. We lived in the same block of land. I wouldn't be right to say the same house, since 1948. We built on a block up on the hill at Kyogle, and we're still there, still likely to be there. The house has grown a lot. We put extra verandas on it, extra rooms, and in a second story, but she's still 20 Mount Street, and she's very much part of the family, and the kids and the grandkids and the great-grandkids all love it.
Jack once said, "I'm sure that the goodwill that my father had created as a person was a big help to us with various people that we dealt with."
In our life, we've been going to Ballina Shore Bay Caravan Park for over 40 years, and we've seen, I think we're on about our third generation grow up there, and it's a great get together, and it's good to see now the grandchildren are starting to get caravans and come there and join us at Christmas. And 20 Mount Street's always been a great gathering place. You see all the kids here, and now they're bringing their kids back there. It's lovely the way they come there and stay a day or two. In 1937, the Stinson airliner was lost on a flight between Brisbane and Sydney, and when it was overdue, the reported sightings of it were down around the Hawkesbury River, and the search concentrated in that area. But there was no radio those days, and the pilot's instructions were the weather was okay, he was to land in Lismore. A week after Bernardo Riley came down off the mountains at Riley's guest house, and was talking to one of the locals down there, and the fella said the plane went directly over his house, and so they got a map out and drew a line on it, and the line was pointing straight to Lismore. After daylight, got out as far as the border, that's about 7 or 8 miles with his horse, and let the horse go loose. And early the next morning he climbed a tree and way across 2 gorges about 8 miles through dense rainforest. He could see a discoloured tree. He thought, well, that shouldn't be discoloured in February. I wonder if a fire caused it. And in the most incredible feat of bushcraft that you could possibly imagine, he walked all day through this massive jungle in a cloudy day, no sun, no nothing, and he came out within cooling distance of where the discoloured tree was, and he cooed and they answered him. There were 2 survivors at the plane.
The Lismore Lions Club began in 1948. It was the first Lions Club in Australia. The Kyogle Club was chartered in 1952. It was the 4th to be formed in Australia. The Kyogle Club became involved in countless community projects. In 1954, Kyogle suffered a severe flood. 14 people drowned and 74 houses were badly damaged. The Lions Club members were heavily involved, distributing food and organising tradesmen, many from Brisbane, to repair the houses.
In the late 60s, we could all see the timber industry was shutting down to a large extent, and the dairying, we'd lost a common market in Europe for our butter, and we were trying to think of something that might give the town an economic lift. We had an absolutely shocking road to Brisbane. We thought, well, if we could get a better road up there to that centre of population, it'd help us. And we had been promised, or the local community had, that in 1966 that within 18 months they'd decide the best route. Another 18 months they'd start building the road, and then in 1969 the government said they'd put it on the back burner for 25 years, and the Lions Club undertook to promote building a better road, the advantages of the short Pacific Highway.
For the railway to get past the range, they had to include a loop in the line to give them height, then a tunnel 1.5 kilometres long through the range.
East and west point in the distance, on the western side of Mount Lindsay as we go around towards the northern side. Macpherson ranges dip down once we leave Mount Lindsay to a low point where I said the road used to originally cross the eastern side of the mountain. Looking up the Grady's Creek catchment. Looking back along the feed range towards the pinnacle, really remarkable feature that juts out about half a mile from the escarpment. Very narrow, 3,000 feet high rocky feature. The Lions Club undertook to promote building a better road, the advantages of the short of the Pacific Highway, all that sort of thing, and eventually as we walked through the bush and found the best route for it and all that, we decided to build a jeep track of some sort to take politicians through to show them.
Jack always had a bit of a thing about the short way through to Brisbane, and he was very interested in the walking trail up to the tunnels, up to the border loop, because you couldn't get there only by walking, and we decided to make it so you could walk up and build a track up to it, four-wheel drive tracks.
The road anyone can use, I'll donate me D8, and that was the key. He's the bloke that really got the wheels turning. And
Jack thought he'd take this on. And it was interesting, he was talking to the Shire engineer here, and Mick something his name was. Anyway, Mick said to him, "Jack, you're wasting your bloody time." That's just the little edge that Jack's need. Jack took the wet bit in his mouth then and took over.
We had a few contacts, like the Shell company went to them and they offered to donate the fuel. And Humes and Hardy gave us heaps of pipes and various machinery operators like Herb McIntosh and Mel Hogan donated machines. Shire helped us where they could, but Murphy was the key. And not only that, probably equally important is his attitude to life. He, would be up there and there'd be great big bloody box trees and gum trees and a bloody 45-degree slope, or a big rocky gully, and you'd think, oh, we'll never get a road across there, just impossible. We'd say, no problem, we'll put them a lot worse places. You should have seen the one we did up Coppercord Creek. And plenty of time where I was very discouraged. Murphy kept me going.
Finally, Murphy's D8 arrives to start moving dirt. Greg Anderson was the driver, and the dream was finally becoming a reality. The work begins, the start of the first cut above Kyogle. The road was above the spiral loop tunnel, and there was a worry that a rock might roll down the hill and onto the railway line.
Between us, we sort of suggested we build a road, trail right across over the border. So we started building it, and then that's when the help came from other things like forestry, shires, Shell oil companies, and all those people, Hume pipes, and all helped us.
Guy Freeman from the Shell Oil Company donated 20 tonnes of diesel fuel. The Fowler tractor from Brown and Hurley got into some bad positions. One day it was pushing landslips off the road when the bank gave way. The tractor ended up 100 yards from the road. Another tractor had to be brought in and make a special track to winch it back up the steep mountainside. Another load of pipes coming up a very slippery wet road.
Greg Anderson came there, a hell of a capable tractor driver, and it made it easy. Like Greg done the first bit with the D8, and then he done the red scheme piece with McIntosh's D6 and Mel Hogan's D6, and then we had Athol Matheson and Bill and Tony Burke and all. We're all experienced bushmen in that type of workplace, and there's not a great lot of danger when the blokes know what they're actually doing.
A log bridge spans one of the gullies. Because of the rainfall which persisted during the time the road was being built, the Lions were very aware that pipes and bridges had to be used. Getting the pipes to the area was hard enough, but getting them into the right position so the road could cover them wasn't so easy.
Yes, well, see, on the bridge we had a very capable bloke in Herb McIntosh, which built the bridge. Well, he not only built the bridge, he cut all the timber too with a swing saw, which we borrowed off his brother.
Swing saws were used in the bush to cut sleevers and girders. One man could operate them, and logs didn't have to be taken to a mill. They were first used in the early 1950s in Victoria and still used today.
examples of how bush ingenuity got us out of trouble, but none better than the bridge that Herb built. It was 16 feet above ground level, the deck, and the piles had to be driven 16 feet into the ground, and of course our pile driver frame was only about 16 feet high, so somehow or other it didn't work out. So there were some trees growing in this gully, and Herb, without any cranes or anything like that of the normal nature, cut the tops off these trees and left the stumps there, built a deck on the stumps, got the pile driver frame up on top of all his deck, and so he finished up with enough height above it for the pile driver monkey to drive the pile, starting off 32 feet above ground. It's just the most amazing thing you'd ever see.
Oh, well, I built the second bridge. The second bridge, I did it in that was supposed to be in my spare time, as Herb McIntosh called it, Murphy's Culvert. But it was sort of, we could see we had some wages left and still going, so we got the materials and we built that bridge. But my main job was sort of just designing and looking after it. And
70s were really wet years, and of course our road had mainly just been pushed through and all the sides were just dirt, so it washed out real easily around the pipes and that. And knockout blow came one night. We had a storm with 13 inches in it, and I went up, and the first 3 big gullies there at Kyogle and the approaches to the bridge at Kyogle were completely washed out. The gully was back just to where it was before we built the road, and I was heartbroken, thought, well, we can never muster the troops to do all this again. I started walking up the road, and I got up a bit, and a kilometre or so, and I met a fella on a motorbike. I said, how'd you get here? He said, oh, on the road, of course. I said, well, isn't it washed out? He said, oh no, from here on it's not too bad.
Over the time the Lions Club members worked on the road, it was often a day out for the whole family. Lots of friendships were made and fun had. At the favourite swimming hole, barbecues, toilets and change rooms were built. The Lions Road was a challenge all the way. They faced each challenge as it came up. Moving the road away from a farmer's house was one of those challenges that seemed to be out of their reach. The road had to be moved towards the railway, which ran through some very steep hills and deep gullies. Help came from an entirely unexpected source. The Army decided to take the job on.
The Army Road, well, a bit like the boy threw the snowball and started the avalanche. One of our Lions members, Stan Roberts' son John, was in the Army. He was at that stage just a sapper and engineer. He said the Army sometimes looking for practical work to do, and he gave us the name of Captain Bridges.
they were young blokes, keen as hell. Never had done anything like that, but never worked in those sort of things. And you sort of had to see them trying to do it to realise how far how much they had to learn. They had all the tickets in the world of how they could do things, but they just couldn't do it. They'd never done it. They'd just...
the Army units involved in the Lions Road exercise was the 2nd 3rd Field Engineering Regiment and the 20 Division Engineer Support Squadron. A lot of credit for this part of the Lions Road must be given to these Army engineers.
The only thing is we only had them for 2 weeks and we wanted to make the road straight so that you could always improve it. So we just had to chew it for 2 weeks and get down as far as we could, and it shows it's a bit of a roller coaster. But the pipes are long enough you could always make it level if you wanted to.
For safety reasons, the Queensland Main Road Department sealed the roller coaster section. Each year, more bitumen was laid. The Lions Road was finally nearing completion.
Road. And Alan McLean and Jack Murray doing the artistic work on the sign. With his gear and Jim and Mal, Eddie, Green Bottle, Bob, Kev, Tony.
Well, it's hard to
Neville.
this one's moving down so much.
Yep.
All right, get over there, and just...
I'd like to pay a tribute to the late Harry Jensen. He was the Lord Mayor of Sydney, and then when we were in the formative stages of the road, he was the New South Wales Minister for Roads and Local Government. But he was a wonderful friend and helped us all the time with our project. Remember the first time we came up, we had a teapot, serviettes and God knows what, and he really went crook on us. He called yourself bloody bushman, carrying on like this. Eventually he got us $30,000 as a grant. Yeah, I'd like to make a mention of Carl Scully and of course Thomas George, our local member, who's been a wonderful support to us. But although Thomas is national and Carl's Labor, through Thomas's PR, we were able to get Carl up, and we had a big problem. We had 2 bridges that were falling down on us, and the estimated cost was $90,000. And through Thomas, we put it up to Carl Scully to put in half, $45,000, which he did, and then we put up the Shire to put in half. The first section was up through Jack Boyle, the great old pioneer bloke up Grady's Creek, but the second half was through the state forest, and there was no problem at that stage, as the forestry were most cooperative. But the clouds were looming, and we realised that it was going to be all declared a national park, so we got it declared a public road, and since then we've worked in with the national park people. Although don't really see eye to eye, well, you know, we get along quite well, and they've put quite a bit of money into it. Earlier, a lot of people, too many to mention, played a major role, and we thank them one and all. But worthy of particular mention, I think, the wives of the farmers up Grady's Creek.
The Lions continued to work on beautifying their road. Not only Lions, but there were a lot of farmers and locals who did and still work on the road voluntarily. Of course, the men couldn't have done the job without the ladies. A couple of mates who were there together at the start and still there today.
Organising was his main part of it, but He drove a tractor, he drove a truck, he did everything that was needed, but his main part was organising.
It originally started around Jack Hurley. It was his toy to get over there, and then from then on, Jack took over the role of the big chief. He organised all the loans, fuel problems, the government problems.
Just with Jack's own ability to associate you in it, involve you in it with a bit of importance, and you've made you feel more than welcome.
Jack's big role was mainly of an evening about 4 o'clock. He'd turn up just when we were knocking off, and then we wouldn't be able to get rid of him until 7 o'clock or so at night. He'd just have to stay there wanting this done and wanting that done. And he always come up with a new idea where he wanted something else done, something else done. I will admit I didn't always do what he wanted to do.
It was a big effort for Jack. Okay, he had people like Murphy Stanfield and half a dozen that battled along with him, but he was the one.
Right from the word go, what we used to have is the cattle camp halfway, wouldn't be halfway along it, and then you turn off to the lookout, where you can watch the train do the circle, the loop.
Oh, well, 30 years of pretty solid work into it, and it's a credit to him.
We spent a lot of time with our families up there through the Lions Club. We'd go up for a Sunday to do a bit of work on the road, clean the pipes out and that sort of stuff, and have a picnic, and it worked out. Having my father involved in it was a great thing too. We had a lot of fun up there with Murphy, and they had a fair competition between the bridge building gangs. Dad used to call Murphy Bridge of Coal, but he said, I built the bridge and you build the coal. Oh yeah, we had our knockers. It did. Some of the club members thought it was just too much. You know, sort of going up there every weekend and not doing other things in town.
Oh, there's people camped everywhere, and you ask them, all we want is somewhere reasonable to camp, and we like running water, and it's what we look for a weekend. And so town to be up there mucking around with it and that. It was very popular. And, oh, it opened it out. Yeah. See, that border loop, I think it's the only one of that full loop in the world. And you couldn't see it unless you could walk. And those days, when we first started there, I didn't think of the old people who laughed about not being able to walk up out of it.
I often reckon it should be called the Hurley Highway, maybe later on.
This area, like when we started on this project, was all covered with lantana, and these hoop pines behind you there were underneath the lantana. Darren, I'd like historically what happened with our history on, like the cedar getters came and took the cedar out, and then later on, probably starting about the early 20s, they started on the hoop pine, and they took the hoop pine out, and then after they started on the hardwood, but both the cedars and the hoop pine sort of grew in the transitional period between the eucalypts and the rainforest, and once you get the canopy, you don't normally get the
For nearly 40 years, Jack Hurley was chairman of the Lions Road Committee. He lobbied politicians and government departments as well as businesses to get this job done. He organised working parties. He worked along with the men.